This program is brought to you by the Vegetarian Society of Hawaii, a nonprofit organization dedicated to sharing with the community the many benefits of a vegetarian diet. Free monthly meetings include vegetarian experts found locally and on the mainland, quick and easy cooking demonstrations, and healthful and delicious food samples. Members enjoy an informative quarterly newsletter, social activities, and discounts at many vegetarian-friendly restaurants and health food stores. For an application, call 944-8344. That's 944-8344. Or visit our website at www.vsh.org. vsh.org.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming to our monthly meeting. The Vegetarian Society of Hawaii is a not-for-profit volunteer organization founded in 1990 for the purpose of promoting human health, animal rights, and protection of the environment by means of vegetarian education. We are now among the largest vegetarian societies in the nation with more than 2,000 members. Tonight's lecture also, for your information, is being videotaped for broadcast on our weekly TV series called Vegetarian. On Oahu, the program airs on Thursdays at 6 on Olelo Channel 52. We recommend that you tape each show, keep the ones you like, tape over the others. In addition, many of our previous lectures can be viewed online on our website, vsh.org. Tonight's lecture will be added to the website soon. Before I introduce tonight's speaker, we have two special guests. They are Senator Mike Gabbard from the 19th Senatorial District in Hawaii, and his wife Carol, a member of the Board of Education. And I'd like to ask them to come up now and say just a few words to us. Thank you so much.
Aloha. Just say a few words. Carol and I have been vegetarians for about 39 years. We used to own a deli, the Natural Deli, down in Inside Down to Earth from 1988 to 1992. We just finished our legislative session on May 1st. It ended, and as some of you that were following the legislation regarding public school lunches, vegetarian public school lunches, the original bill that was introduced was SB 2136, which would require the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Education, the Hawaii Food Service to develop nutritionally sound public school menu plans that give students the option of a vegetarian school lunch. Unfortunately, that bill did not get a hearing. It was referred to the Health Committee and also to the Education Committee on which I sit, but both chairs decided not to hear that bill. What did come out of the legislature, though, was a concurrent resolution, which means it's passed by the House and the Senate, which says that the Department of Education and the Hawaii Public School Service, it instructs them to develop nutritionally sound public school menu plans that include vegetarian and vegan meals. The DOE and the Hawaii Public Food Service, they have to consider nutritionally sound public school menu plans that give students the option of vegetarian and vegan public school meals. That's one. The Department of Education is requested to put on its website a list of schools that have vegetarian and vegan menu options. And this is very important, is that they are required, the DOE is required to submit a report to the legislature before we convene next January on this particular resolution. So I think this is, it's not the whole enchilada, but at least it's a step in the right direction. And I'd like to thank President Bill Harris and any of the other members of the Vegetarian Society that came down to testify, because that's really what it's all about. Many times the decision makers down there, we rely on the public testimony or the emails or the letters, and it really does make a difference. Sometimes it takes a while to get things passed, and really what the important thing is that people like yourselves, if you feel strongly on issues, is to get involved in the process. Because the more you get involved, the more you can possibly reach that critical mass where it will turn a legislator's mind around and actually support the legislation that you want passed. And so thank you very much for the opportunity to say a few words. And Carol used to be on the Board of Education, so from 2000 to 2004. Carol?
Thank you. Yeah, I was on the board from 2000 to 2004. And that's when I met John Cadman, I've made a point to visit as many schools I could as I was on the different islands, and visited Haiku Elementary, and was very pleased to see and learn about. He took me into his kitchen, showed me some of his menus, and showed me anything I could do to support what he's doing. And he's done a great job with a website, which I'm sure he'll tell you about, and helping others follow in his footsteps in the food service. But it is a big mountain to climb to get the school's lunch service to our way of thinking. And while I was on the board, I did work with Gene Kanashiro, who at that time was the head of the school lunch program, and he actually initiated some training for school lunch managers to start cooking more natural, healthy ways, not using good, whole grains, choosing local produce, not frying with so much oil, using good oils, things like that. But he's no longer there. But it was a start. But I was very happy that we could involve John with this legislation, and I look forward to hearing what he has to say tonight. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and I'm happy to be here. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Carol and Mike, and best to you in your efforts. It's now time to introduce tonight's guest. We're delighted to have with us Chef John Cadman, who will present a cooking demonstration and lecture entitled A Successful Vegetarian School Lunch Program, One Man's Commitment. Chef Cadman will present a PowerPoint lecture explaining complexities of creating attractive and appetizing school lunch meals within the U.S. Department of Agriculture guidelines. He'll also demonstrate the preparation of several approved school lunch selections. Chef Cadman, the school food services manager at Haiku Elementary on Maui, has been offering optional vegetarian meals to students and teachers for 12 years. A veteran food service worker for over 30 years in such places as the Four Seasons Wailea, the Grande Wailea, Hyatt Regency Kaanapali, the Maui Prince, and the Intercontinental, he's now primarily at Haiku Elementary when not enjoying water sports and surfing. Please welcome Chef John Cadman.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank everyone who took time out tonight to come out and listen to what I have to say. I hope it will be of interest to you. I have been doing this for 12 years. Mike, I thought that bill passed 12 years ago. You mean I haven't been having to serve vegetarian lunches for 12 years? No, but seriously, I started in the schools. I came out, as she mentioned, from the hotels, and I did that for probably 12 years. And I just got really tired of the schedule. To be honest, I started working in the schools for the schedule. That was my sole motivation, completely for self, I admit that. But when I got there, I realized that it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed children, and that's, the schedule is fantastic. But what I realized very quickly was that there was this huge gap in what we understand and know about food in relation to children and what is actually on the plate. And so the person before me had actually been serving sort of a meatless option. Principal there was actually, I think, the only junk food vegetarian I've ever met. She used to have microwave popcorn for dinner. But anyway, she supported it, and so I figured, well, if they've been doing it, I'll just keep it going and kind of take it to the next level. And my philosophy has always been, it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission, which is why I've been doing these things. And I believe it's in the best interest of the kids, and I'm totally prepared to defend it. And as long as it meets USDA guidelines, there's really not much they can say. So tonight is mainly a primer for why we have to do what we do, why we're doing what we're doing, the direction we're headed. But a lot of people don't understand the complexities of school lunch, that the guidelines that we have, the things that we have to adhere to. So I'm going to kind of go over that tonight. The demo portion is kind of limited. We are going to try a couple items. I brought my black and white soup, which is real tasty. We're going to eat that. And then also a Baja Baker, which is a stuffed baked potato with beans and salsa and the potato that kind of came about by accident, actually. I had one of those aha moments at the dinner table one night, and I came up with that. Okay, so we're going to get started on my PowerPoint.
But this should be a lot of information for you, and hopefully you guys will learn something, and away we go. So, see if you're paying attention. Who does not know who said, nothing will benefit human health and increase the chances for survival of life on Earth as much as the evolution to a vegetarian diet? Every good vegetarian probably, I'm assuming, knows who said that. Does anybody not know who said that? A few hands? Okay. Our good buddy, Albert Einstein, said that. He's a pretty smart guy. Unfortunately, they listened to his work on atomic power more than they did his thoughts on evolution to a vegetarian diet. One of the other things that he said that I really like, he is really a quotable guy. I didn't realize that. I mean, he wasn't just super smart, but if you go to his some quote pages, he's got some great quotes. This is another one I love because this really applies to what we're talking about tonight. Significant problems we have cannot be solved at the same level of thinking with which we created them. In other words, it takes a shift in consciousness to fix a problem. If you continue in that same problem with the same mode of thinking, I don't feel a real effective solution is usually comes out of that. And I think the move towards a vegetarian diet and lifestyle is definitely a shift in consciousness. You know, it's not something that I think we so much want to legislate, although I feel as a school food service worker, I have a responsibility to be proactive in those steps. But it's definitely going to take a shift in consciousness from in our society, and that's happening. You know, it really is. One of the things I'm going to refer to a lot in this lecture, is that shift in consciousness. And, you know, a good example of that was back in the Middle Ages when Copernicus came around and suggested that the Earth is not the center of the universe. And that was just unthinkable, you know, to imagine that we weren't at the center of the universe. And then Galileo came and did some observations and said, I think he's right. People still didn't want to accept it. And then Kepler came along and proved it with math, and then finally Sir Isaac Newton came and conclusively proved the Earth is not the center of the universe. That didn't happen overnight. People just didn't wake up in the morning and said, hey, some guy says it might be we might just be floating out there in space going around the sun at the edge of the Milky Way even. You know, it just doesn't happen that way. It just takes time, and that's kind of the way I think this deal is going. You know, people's awareness is slowly changing, but it takes time. It takes commitment from people that believe in it, and that's why I appreciate you guys coming out tonight. School lunches. 1790, combined program of teaching by this fella here, Count Rumford, started some feeding, actually not just in school so much, but basically homeless and vagrant children in Germany, and he spread it into Europe. Here's a little bit of an irony. The food served to children consists mainly of soup made from potatoes, barley, and peas. Meat was not included in the diet because of its high cost. Those poor kids eating just vegetable soup. This is a green stamp bonus. I'm not even going to charge you for this right here. I thought this was fascinating. 60,000 people were fed daily in London from these kitchens that he had. And through his efforts, they actually, developed more efficient food preparation facilities. He is credited with having invented the double boiler, the kitchen range, baking oven, fireless cooker, pressure cooker, drip coffee pot, all of them being forerunners of the steam-jacketed kettle, compartment, steamer, and commercial ovens used extensively in food service today. So thank you, Count Rumford, for all that. In the United States, in Philadelphia, and I think about at the same time in Boston, the Star Center Association started serving lunches. They cost a penny. Not a bad deal. Early 1900s, there was a big push, war gardens. It was called the War Gardening Pamphlet. You know, food was in short supply because of the war, and they thought, hey, having kids grow their own food while they're at school is a great idea. And this is J.H. Francis, director of the School Army Garden. There is a mighty army of boys and girls, 30 to 50 million strong, who have heads, hearts, and hands, leisure time, and patriotism to spare. There are also hundreds of thousands of acres of tillable land uncultivated. Superintendents of schools must make their schools a vital and actual force in giving more food to the world and in conserving what is produced. Through the school children, we can make the undertaking not merely immediately productive, but a permanent factor in American life as well. 90 years ago, this guy knew what the solution to the problem that we didn't even have yet is having kids make that connection to gardens. You know, that's really important. Liberty Hyde Bailey, he was a horticulturist. Give the children an opportunity to make a garden. Let them grow what they will. It matters less that they grow good plants than that they try for themselves. In the long view, no nation is healthier than its children or more prosperous than its farmers. $20 if anyone can tell me who said that. Going, gone. Okay. President Harry Truman on signing the 1946 National School Lunch Act. Look at those kids, aren't they well behaved? Okay, so that the National School Lunch Program that we know of today, that the federal government basically got involved with, started subsidizing, as we know it started in 1946. And it is a federally assisted meal program operating in public, nonprofit, private schools and residential child care institutions. It provides nutritionally balanced, low-cost or free lunches to children each school day. The program was established, as I mentioned, by the National School Lunch Act, 1946, signed by President Harry S. Truman. You know, ever since then, it has been, USDA is actually the branch of the government that monitors the school lunch program. Today, lunch is served in over 101,000 public and nonprofit private schools. And we're serving about 30 million kids a day in this country. So here's the deal. For those schools that wish to take part in it, we get cash subsidies, donated commodities from the USDA. Here's the catch. In return, we must serve lunches that meet federal requirements, and they must offer free or reduced price lunches to eligible children. So what are those nutritional requirements for school lunches? School lunches must meet the applicable recommendations of the Dietary Guidelines for Americans, which recommends that no more than 30% of an individual's calories come from fat and less than 10% from saturated fat. Regulations also establish a standard for school lunches to provide 1/3 of the RDA allowance of protein, vitamin A, vitamin C, iron, calcium, and calories. So these recommendations, dietary guidelines for Americans come out periodically every 5 to 10 years, and they were redone, as far as I know, about 5 years ago. In Hawaii, the schools really try and meet these. I can't say that for sure is the case across the country, depending on the type of lunches they're serving. But the government is making a push that we do meet these guidelines. Now, how do they meet them is the question. We do have some guidelines to follow. So what does the USDA provide us? Money. Lots of money. Most of the support USDA provides to schools in the National School Lunch Program comes in the form of cash reimbursements for each meal served. So free lunches, we get $2.47 from the federal government. Reduced lunches, kids that pay 20 cents, we get $2.07. And for a paid lunch, we get 23 cents. In addition to cash reimbursements, schools are entitled to, by law, to receive commodity foods called entitlement foods at a value of 16.75 cents for each meal served, and this was fiscal year 06-07. Schools can also get bonus commodities as they're available from surplus agricultural stocks. Interesting statistic here. The government buys over $900 million worth of farm products each year and turns them over to schools. The USDA calls this a win-win situation. Schools get free ingredients while farmers are guaranteed a steady income. And I think this is one of the biggest issues in areas of the school lunch program that is going to be so hard to change. You know, this is something that's been going on for almost 60 years, and farmers count on it. And you know, we do get some good products. You know, we are tonight. I'm using salsa, canned salsa from California. That's tasty. You know, it's not the best salsa I've had, but it's good. We do get that. I get canned apples. We've even had blueberries and walnuts. But one of my statistics, about 2/3 of our subsidies, 2/3 of the $935 million the USDA spent on lunch commodities in fiscal '03 went towards meat and dairy products. A little more than 1/4 of the total went towards fruits and vegetables, mostly canned and frozen. So it's disproportionately spent, I think we would all agree, on the meat and dairy. And of course the reason is they have the heaviest lobby in Washington. There is some bright spots though. A very successful project between USDA and Department of Defense. Don't ask me how the Department of Defense is involved with this. I don't understand that. But I order my vegetables 2 weeks ahead and they come, and so I'm not asking any questions. But they provide fresh produce. USDA has also worked with schools to promote connections with local small farmers who may be able to help provide fresh produce. I think my budget for my school, Haiku, it's a smaller. I have almost $3,000 a year I can use for my produce, and I certainly can buy, in addition to that, but my DoD allotment is almost $3,000, so that's certainly nice, As a matter of fact, today I talked, and speaking to the local farmers, I've been buying from local farmers in Haiku for about, almost the whole time I've been there. Talked with the guys bringing me some apple bananas next week, 75 cents a pound, and there's no reason why cafeteria managers can't do that. So, and I think that's kind of an untapped area. Some people are kind of leery of the system or whatever, but it's really not hard to set up an account and do that. So that's something that I'd like to see promoted more as well. I took a picture of my cafeteria ladies before I came over. I thought you'd like to see that thing. High heels. They are steel toe high heels, just so you know. It's a regulation. Not really. Steel toe high heels. Yeah, doesn't everybody have those? No, I got a kick out of making this PowerPoint. There's just so much stuff on the web. How much does it cost? Do you really want to know? Before I said, it used to cost 5 cents. Look at that. That's a token for a school lunch in Hawaii. I don't know how far back. Anybody remember that? Probably not you, Bill. You were here in '70. I'm sure this was like probably 40s, maybe, something. Kind of cool. But it doesn't cost 5 cents. It actually, federal money kicked in fiscal 2006, just a little over $8 billion. And thank you, Mike. Well, I don't know if you were there in '04, but state gave us $16 million. It's probably a little bit more than that now, just to the state of Hawaii. So there's a lot of money involved, and of course whenever there's money involved, then big business gets involved too. So here's some statistics for you guys. Hawaii Public Schools, about a little over 100,000 meals a day. About a third of those we do breakfast, 30,000 breakfasts, and almost half qualify for free. Our enrollment is 173, so we're about a 60% participation is what you'd say if 107 out of 173 are participating. The reality is you get about 80 to 90% in the elementary grades, and as you move up to the older grades, the high schools, a lot less kids are eating. And that's really one of my concerns. And I'll get into my goals right now and where I'm headed. I'm actually going to be working at a high school next year. Try out some of these things. Actual cost of producing a school lunch is $3.70. It's actually a little bit more now, but this is what I pulled off the internet from about a year ago. And we bring in $19 million from ticket sales. USDA provides $32 million. And of course there's that $16 million from the state. And we get $10 million there again from federal and military dependents. I'm not sure where the military has to do with feeding school kids, but we'll take it. There's my school right there. There's my cook. So school lunch programs, sort of an evolution what happened here. So the USDA or the government kind of got involved before the School Lunch Act was passed in the 30s. They had two purposes: to help dispose of surplus agricultural commodities owned by the government as a result of price support agreement with farmers. and to help prevent nutritional deficiencies among low-income school children. So you got two things that don't really go together there. You know, you got huge agribusiness and school kids, and they've mixed them. And it's, like I said, it's really hard to get those things separated now that they're together. I don't know how that's possible. You know, as soon as this got established, you know, a lot of people call the school lunch program the biggest social welfare flawed program that we have in our nation. Because once those two things got it in bed together, not easily removed. There's that lady, but it looks so innocent, doesn't it? Feeding kids, such a good cause, yeah? And it really is, you know? It really is. Just needs a little tweaking. The problem came in, you know, everybody used to just make homemade scratch food. Food was cheaper, simpler. Kids actually ate food that you cooked for them from scratch. In the 80s, populations were expanding and budgets for school lunches were not able to keep up. Schools turned to outside vendors to provide meals and additional income. This became known as branding. And branding in food service operations is defined as the use of nationally or locally labeled branded products for sale in existing food service operations. Okay, this is a statistic I got off the internet. This happened to come from Indiana. So this is an individual state, but it's fairly reflective of the nation as a whole. 3% to 24% between 1990 and basically the decade of the 90s. So they went from almost no branding to 25%. And then by the 1999-2000 school year, 30% of SFAs, that's School Food Service Authority, that's the governing body over a certain area in school lunch, were using branded foods. The desire to increase students' interest was the primary reason for using brand name fast foods, whereas high cost and concerns about nutritional quality were major reasons for not using them. You know, there's not a whole lot of vegetarians in the school lunch program and in positions where people are making these decisions, but they're really not that clueless. They realize the detriment that these foods have for our kids. The problem is, many of them are administrators and they're stuck between this rock and a hard place. You know, they've got their budget and they've got the demand to serve school lunches, and to meet those two demands is really hard. So a lot of school districts have allowed Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, I don't know, McDonald's probably. I know some of the burger chains are in there, and they've come in and they said, hey, we'll serve your lunches for you. And what that does is it increases participation. More kids will eat the school lunch than if you serve lentil soup or homemade stew. And that's unfortunate because the kids are really moving towards that, you know, well, we're seeing the consequences of it, right? Obesity has doubled. I mean, it's epidemic proportions in our youth over 10 years ago. Adult onset diabetes is a factor. I mean, we realize what this has caused. The problem is now they're saying, okay, now we have to change it. Well, one of the challenges is that kids have their eating habits established. You know, if they ate lunch every day at school, that's 5 meals out of theoretically 21 meals a week. That's less than a quarter, 25% of their meals they're eating at school. So you can safely say that kids are not establishing their eating habits at school. They're getting them, for one, by watching the TV and getting pummeled with mass marketing. You know, I think I heard the statistic once, the amount of money that they spend on the advertisement for one candy bar is like $30 million a year. And the amount of money the USDA spends to advertise for school lunch and eating healthier, or like the 5-a-day program, is like $1 million. You know, it's so overwhelmingly stacked that, you know, we're really fighting this. And again, back to that shift in consciousness. You know, people are starting to kind of like wake up like that cartoon character who fell off the building and go, whoa, wait a second, what's going on here? Our kids are unhealthy. You know, our society as a whole is unhealthy. Why? Well, it's multifaceted, but because of our diet is one of the biggest factors. So while I don't feel responsible for establishing kids' eating habits, for me, my own personal feeling on this, I feel that kids, and this is where I'll digress just for a moment to let you know kind of where I stand. I really feel it's important for kids to be able to have a healthy choice. That's the most important thing. If kids, all they have is a meat option, I don't think that's doing the service when we know that a plant-based diet is going to be healthier for them. I believe we need to be proactive in doing that. And an interesting observation I've had too, because a lot of people ask me, well, how many of your kids are vegetarian? And I say, honestly, I don't know. Because my vegetarian meal, it might be a peanut butter sandwich, might be the entree that day. And half the kids at school will take the peanut butter sandwich versus the hamburger. We had some people come, might have been Carol's group, I don't know. They came up and they saw one of my students eating the vegetarian option and they said, oh, are you a vegetarian? He said, no, I'm Portuguese. The point is, it doesn't matter, you don't have to be one or the other. I think most vegetarians didn't wake up one day and say, woo, the Earth's not at the center of the universe anymore. I'm not going to eat meat today from now and evermore, It's a gradual progression. And just like with the kids, they need healthy options and choices. And that's where I feel we have a responsibility, is to give these kids healthier options. And I will get into some of the options that I have. They are somewhat limited. There we go. Very interesting story. My grandma was the cafeteria manager in California for 25 years. Did not call in sick one day. When she was 90, this was back in 1996 when I started at school food service, I actually won this trip to go to the school lunch convention they have every year out in Orlando, Florida. She took a train, because she loved the train. She was 90 years old. She took a train from California out to Orlando, Florida to be with me to go to this conference, right? And she was sharp as a tack. The only thing going was her ears. And I'll never forget this. We were walking across the hotel over to the convention center. And of course, cafeteria workers as a whole are some of the most overweight demographic people that I've ever seen. And she said, John, I've never seen so many fat people in my life. It was the truth, though. It was the truth. I mean, and I thought, and that was one of the things that kind of like gave me one of those aha moments, like, it's true. It's maybe indicative of our society as a whole. We're overweight, but it's true. Cafeteria workers eating a lot of that starchy, processed food. That's not what our bodies need. This is a high school in Cohasset, Massachusetts. Until kids realize that this is what's killing them. But there is a change of consciousness. I am moving up to a high school next year so I can work on some more alternative, creative, healthy, kid-friendly menus. And high schoolers are definitely more attracted to that. And so I'm looking forward to that. I went up there 4 consecutive Fridays last year and tried some of my recipes. And the kids were just like, oh my gosh, this is great. They loved it. They're really tired of a lot of the food they're having. So there is hope. I definitely see a change in a lot of the high schoolers that they're either going totally vegetarian or they're eating healthier. And just some bright spots too in Hawaii, one of the few states that does not utilize the practice of branding at this point. There are no restaurants coming into Hawaii. We still bake our own bread daily at all schools using at least 25% whole wheat flour. We're going to try and bump that up to 50% next year. Rice is served using at least 1/3 brown rice, and they're going to eliminate trans fats out of the food. So that's a good thing. Maybe not of a whole lot of interest to you, but I will go into it for the sake of just so you know why we're doing what we're doing. There are several ways to classify a meal as what they call reimbursable. In other words, the federal government will only give you money if it's called a reimbursable meal. And right now we're using traditional food-based menu planning approach, meal patterns. And what that means, what the heck is that? Well, that is, you have basically 5 components to your lunch. You have vegetable or fruit, or 2 or more servings of both. So generally you have a fruit and a vegetable, but you could serve 2 servings of vegetable or 2 of fruit, technically. Milk is one of those. Grains, breads, 8 servings per week. That can be breads, pasta, rice. That's pretty much it for that. And then, of course, your meat and meat alternate. Oh, and what I do at school, I put juice in the milk cooler for the kids, and over half the kids take the juice instead of the milk. And I wish I could get it calcium fortified, but at this point, we're working with the vendors. Actually, they're over here in Oahu. That would be an area to look into, is if we could get the juice fortified with calcium, the dairy would not have a much of a leg to stand on, because the kids already get enough protein. But the trick is this meat alternate. Grades 4 to 12, these are the options that I have. In case you're wondering why I can't use tofu or garden burgers or Eves or any of the great products that are out there, it has to be lean meat, poultry or fish, 2 ounces, alternate protein products. That's there's a law that they have that the meat guys got passed. Unless it's 18% protein by weight, it will never qualify. And if you look at any garden burger or any Eves patty or any of those patties, none of them are 18% protein by weight. 2 ounces of cheese, you're better off eating 2 ounces of meat, because cheese has tons of cholesterol and fat. 1 large egg, and there's my savior, cooked dry beans or peas. Peanut butter, 4 tablespoons. You ever try to eat 4 tablespoons of butter in Whistle Dixie? Can't do it. That's a lot of peanut butter to meet the meat alternate equivalent. Yogurt, you can do 8 ounces, but fairly cost inefficient. So anyway, beans, that's where it's at. That's why the name of my website is called thebeanpages.com. Another approach to analyzing menus is called Nutrient Standard. And they're not doing it at all in Hawaii. I suppose I should probably start, and then if they get mad, I could ask for forgiveness later. Because what this entails is, instead of 5-component lunch, you basically analyze your meals over the course of a week, and you pull the protein out of every item, you pull the vitamin A out of every item, you pull the calories out of everything, and you end up with a nutritional analysis. And if it meets that, which it's really not hard to do, romaine has protein in it, pasta has protein. You can get protein from a lot of sources. It allows you to a lot more freedom. But that's not where we're at right now. So my menus are geared towards that 2-ounce meat alternate coming from beans. And here, in case, just FYI, another green stamp bonus, no extra charge. The minimum nutrient and calorie levels for school lunches. So about 825 calories, 16 grams of protein, 400 milligrams calcium, iron, vitamin A, vitamin C. I think they're going to have limits on sodium pretty soon too. School lunch reform movement, there's a lot of bright spots out there. Today, school-age children are facing an escalation of diet-related illness. We talked about that. Obesity, anemia, and type 2 diabetes. Serious health challenges, as well as problems associated with chronic low-grade malnutrition, interfere with the ability of students to learn effectively, achieve high standards in school, and lead healthy and productive lives. It's really common knowledge. That's the thing about it is people are really aware of that kids that are well-fed and eat a good breakfast and have a good lunch do better in school. That's been proven. No one argues that point, and yet they keep taking away time from school lunch. They take out physical activity. Oh, I'm sorry. This is Center for Eco-Literacy from a study that they did. And this is really what we need to look at. Making the school lunch period and the process of cooking and eating a true learning experience helps children understand that they have choices about the kinds of food they put in their bodies, reinforces the idea that there is a real connection between their health and the food they eat, and encourages them to learn even more about how what they eat affects their lives every day. That was also from Center for Eco-Literacy. And there's some good books out there if you're wondering, love or hate the food served there. The American School Lunchroom is the stage for one of the most popular yet flawed social welfare programs in our nation's history. School Lunch Politics. You can get it on probably eBay or Amazon. The paradox of the industrial food system is that it has made highly processed, high-calorie foods cheaper than minimally processed ones, to the point where it's far less expensive to buy a hamburger than it is to buy ingredients to make bread or vegetables to put in your sandwich. There again, the economics of it is what challenges a lot of people. So unless you get someone that really believes in it, if kids' health comes down to economics, and unfortunately the kids suffer. How Americans became the fattest people on the planet. Good chapter in there on who let the calories sneak into the lunchroom. Chez Panisse Foundation, seeking to change the way children eat rather than tell them what not to eat. We want to bring them into a new relationship with food. When children grow and prepare fresh, healthy food themselves every day, they choose nourishing meals and learn responsibilities and values. Again, guys were saying this 100 years ago. Nothing new. But it's just taken an epidemic of obesity and diabetes for us to realize that we have to get back to those original values. Another organization, the Choice Program, Citizens for Healthy Options in Children's Education. They've got a lot of great ideas, good resource. Slow Food is another one. It's started by Alice Waters, who actually started Chez Panisse too. But a revolution in public education, a real delicious revolution when the hearts and minds of our children are captured by a school lunch curriculum enriched with experience in the garden. Sustainability will become the lens through which they see the world. Again, nothing new. Instilling ownership in the foods they eat in the following ways. So, establishing schoolyard and neighborhood gardens, allowing kids to cook and serve the food to one another. That's a huge one, Having nice environment and setting for the kids to eat, that's a biggie. And also having nutrition taught in the schools, that's really important. I think to become a doctor, you only have to have like one class in nutrition. And it just goes to show you our society, it's changing hopefully, but we've kind of forgotten a lot of it. So here's some healthy selections to be offered this year, upcoming year. I do some now, but some of these are a little wild and outlandish for elementary kids, but this is what we're going to be looking at. A fiesta lasagna, minestrone soup, bean tostadas, hummus and vegetable sticks, Baja Bakers, you get to try those tonight, black bean soup, hummus wraps with sprouts, brown rice and beans, black and white soup, we're going to try that, and Toby. You guys want to go back maybe and we'll start dishing stuff up? And black bean enchilada casserole. Here's another good one. They love this. This is not vegetarian, sorry, but it can be served. It's a Southwestern black bean and enchilada chicken taco salad with a cilantro lime dressing. I came up with that. Black bean enchilada casserole. I served these up at the school last year. They really loved it. So, here's my webpage, thebeanpages.com. Delicious, nutritious, kid-friendly recipes using beans, all designed for lunch in the school lunch program. That's a homemade pita bread I made with some hummus, salad, and carrots and sprouts, a little bit of ranch dressing. So yeah, you're welcome to go to that page. All of my recipes are on that page. I'm not going to pass out recipes tonight. I didn't think I could really show vegetarians how to cook because I figured usually you guys are pretty good cooks already. I will kind of demonstrate sort of what I did. The black and white soup is real easy, even the Baja Bakers. Yeah, it's my homemade pita and hummus. So the bottom line is healthy food equals better students. Healthy food equals healthy children. And healthy food equals healthy communities. So there's definitely a lot more to eating a more plant-based diet than there is just for healthy bodies. So there is my name, my email, and my phone number. So I'm going to, hold on one sec here. I'm going to get my stuff and I'll just kind of show you what we're going to be doing, what we're having tonight. I was going to show you. Well, you know what? I'll save this. This is my cookbook. You didn't know I wrote a cookbook, did you, Bill? So we're having black and white soup tonight. What I basically did was to make recipes that qualify for that school lunch so that they need 4 ounces of beans to get that federal reimbursement. What I did was I just scoured the internet for like recipes that just, or names of a recipe that look good, like black and white soup. I thought, oh, what a great idea. I can do that. And so I worked backwards. I said, okay, for 100 kids, I'm going to need 4 pounds of beans, and work backwards so I know how much soup to make. And I did that for all my recipes, so they all qualify. So basically, I make the soup separately. I make a black bean soup and a white bean soup. For the black bean soup, I saute up carrots, onions, celery, basic mirepoix with a little bell peppers and garlic. Add my soaked black beans, and if you want to know how to soak beans, I've got a nice, on my webpage, hot soak, a quick soak, overnight soak, and the pros and cons of each. So add the beans in there, add a vegetable stock, so tonight it is a vegan soup, and just let it simmer. And then I puree it up in a blender, and I keep them separate. And when I pour them, you pour them into the bowl separately so you get black and white together, and then I'm going to put a little salsa in the middle. So it's a really nice presentation, super healthy. It meets the dietary guidelines. It is a reimbursable lunch. That was one of my inspirations. The other one came at dinner one night. And this one I really like. The kids love this, even at elementary school. It's called Baja Bakers. And I was sitting eating, I do catering on the side, and I was sitting eating this leftover baked potato. And my son was having this quesadilla. And he got up, and I didn't have any beans that night. So he got up, and he went, and he opened a can of beans, popped them in the microwave, came back, and ate some of them. And there was some sitting there, and I thought, wow, what if I stuffed the beans in with the baked potato? Because I've made twice baked potatoes before, right? And I thought, oh, what a great idea, because refried beans in with a potato, you not only get the beans, but you also get the protein from the beans. So you get vegetable and protein in the same one. So, basically, anybody made stuffed baked potatoes before? Real simple. You just throw your potato in the oven, you bake it, you cut it in half, you scoop out the filling so you get something that looks like maybe the sole of a shoe, but that's the skin. And then I just take, in a bowl, I just take my potato mix in some refried beans. This has a little bit of salsa in there. You could add green onions, you could do whatever you like. And then I scoop it back in. This is the cooking demo portion. Pay attention because this is over real quick. Just put it back in. And then the other thing was, I was reading a cookbook one day, and they had this recipe for baked flounder, and it had a breadcrumb cheese mix on it. I thought, oh, that would be great as a little topping. So I just take breadcrumbs, and tonight we're using vegan cheese that you grate up, mix in with the breadcrumbs, and just spread it right over the potato. And then you throw it in the oven and bake it for just till it gets a little bit brown. And it's really good. I think someday I'm going to win a recipe contest with that. I actually entered the U.S. Dry Bean Council's recipe contest once, and I got national runner-up. It was for a vegetarian sloppy joe using beans. And it was good. I don't make that anymore. I guess I should. And here's my theory. And my book is not selling too good, so I only brought one copy tonight. And I'm not sure why. So here it is. Here's John's cookbook right here. Maybe it's not selling too good. It's only got 2 pages in it. It sums up my whole philosophy and approach to life. It says more plants, less animals, stay active, the end. I don't know why no one's buying it. Maybe because they memorize it and they don't have to. But that's you know what? It's very simple, but that's really true. We need to. And so I'm not trying to just get all my kids to become vegetarians. I'm trying to move them in that direction of a plant-based diet. Let me get a black bean soup for the camera. So here's the soup. We just take it, pour it in with 2 separate ladles, and then put the salsa on the top. Sure. I might even win a contest with that. That was pretty good. Unless one of you guys enter first. So this is a black bean soup, a white bean soup with salsa as a dollop in the middle for garnish. Yeah, I use vegetable stock. The black bean soup has carrots, onions, celery, and bell peppers. Okay, great question. The question is, how do I get my workers motivated to do this seemingly harder, more work, extra duty? I've got this taser that I bring to work with me. Yeah, I worked for no. That's a great question. You know, for me, I guess it's like, why not? Like, we're here for 8 hours. And so I try and motivate them. It's the satisfaction of doing something, because that's why I got into cooking in the first place. I don't think anybody should be in the food profession, food service business, if they don't love to make food and serve it to people to eat. You know, that's why it has to come from here and not up here. And hopefully I can convey that to some of my workers, that I have a passion, I love this. I get just a lot of juice from making something that the kids eat and say, wow, this is great, and ask for it. That you can transmit that, I'm hoping, you know. I do know for a fact that a lot of the workers up there are excited, because you know what? People get bored doing the same old thing over and over. Yes, there are people that no matter what, don't like any change. I think as most people don't like change in general. The good news is that if I go from 350 lunches to 800, I'll probably get 2 more full-time workers. So we won't expect those people to make the same number of lunches. We'll actually get more staffing, which is an incentive. And another incentive is the legislature has the option every year to privatize in Hawaii. And if people don't start realizing that if we aren't meeting the demands of the public, of the consumer, of the government, of the people that are in charge, and saying, look, you guys need to make healthier, tastier lunches, we can privatize and let somebody who will do it. So, you know, a lot of people think that, you know, this school lunch is a sacred cow, but it's really not. You know, we could privatize. They talk about it every year, and it'll come down to economics. So hopefully we'll start to see that picture, and we'll wake up from, sometimes they do have a little bit of a state of slumber and just kind of doing things same old. So, but I'm hoping I can motivate them, and I do know that there are a lot of managers out there that don't share that philosophy of asking for forgiveness versus before permission. And it's not that they don't want to try new things, but they are strictly by the book. I've never met a group of people that are more by the book than cafeteria managers. So, you know, if you give them the option to make some of these things, I do know personally many that would. I'm just doing it before they told me I could. Any other questions? Salad bar. You know, Gene Kaneshiro, in credit to him, tried to get salad bars in all the schools. Great concept. In theory, fabulous. The reality, though, then they have a salad bar at King K. The first thing I'm going to do is get rid of it. And I know you're going, well, what are you talking about? Don't stab me in the back when I leave. No, but the reason is I have 1,200 kids that are released all at once. Salad bar, you can't have someone coming down, picking up a carrot stick and a celery and cucumber and making your plate. You know, if I had 50 of them, maybe, but that's not realistic. Right now they have one salad bar, and maybe 50 kids go through it every day, so it just doesn't work in the school lunch setting. The other thing is that, you know what, the kids that eat it are really tired of it anyway, because they get the same stuff every day. So I'm moving away from the salad bar, going towards just hot vegetarian items. But I will do prepackaged salads that are ready to go. Can be like, I'll do a chicken Caesar salad. They'll have the option to take it with or without chicken. That'll be basically a complete grab-and-go meal. But great question. Great question. What about all of these health? I mean, yeah, there's a multitude of healthy products, supplements. You know, soy milk. Why can't we have soy milk along with dairy milk? That one slide that we talked about, the paradox of our system is it's cheaper to buy a hamburger that is the most. I mean, when you look at each level you lose like 90% of the energy every level, going from grass to animal to. But why is it hamburgers are cheaper than soy burgers? You know, it shouldn't be that way. But the way our food industry is set up, right now, the quality vegetarian products, soy milk, are too expensive. So, and I didn't share this. That's another good point to make is I have less than $1 to pay for my food. My food cost needs to be right around $1. and I at this point, my hands are tied, I have to serve milk, that's 33 cents. So that means I have 70 cents roughly to pay for the food cost for my meal. As the demand for soy milk increases, I'm sure price will go down, and then we'll, be able to offer that. I don't see why not. Any other questions? Let me touch on that again. How about soy? There's some great products out there, right? The problem is the way they wrote the laws, a product has to be 18% protein by weight. In other words, if you have a 4-ounce meat patty, it's got to be whatever 18% of 4 ounces, it has to have that much protein. Well, the reality is soy-based protein products, like there's a whole bunch of them out there, TVP and a whole bunch, and soy flour. None of them are 18% protein by weight. So I've never seen a product. It may have 12 grams of protein, which is plenty, right? It may have more protein than the turkey hot dog that we're currently serving, but because it's not 18% protein by weight, it doesn't qualify under the federal guidelines that they give us. So we have a stacked deck. Tofu, unfortunately, they've tried to get tofu to meet the guidelines, and up to this point they can't. I guess because it varies by brand. I think it's kind of an excuse, but at this point tofu has not been qualified by the USDA. Is anyone else doing this? There's a manager in Kihei who's playing around with vegetarian items. Maybe not so much like me. But there's definitely other people that are willing to try it and do things, yes. And one last question. When we stop putting economics in front of the health of the kids, we will be able to buy products not based on cost, but on health. I think we're out of time. We're out of time. We're going to eat, but I'll answer more questions up here. Come on, try my soup and potatoes. I do got to get back to the airport in a little while, so I'll be here about 10 more minutes.
Okay. Thank you so much, John. Thank you very much for coming.
This program is brought to you by the Vegetarian Society of Hawaii, a nonprofit organization dedicated to sharing with the community the many benefits of a vegetarian diet. Free monthly meetings include vegetarian experts found locally and on the mainland, quick and easy cooking demonstrations, and healthful and delicious food samples. Members enjoy an informative quarterly newsletter, social activities, and discounts at many vegetarian-friendly restaurants and health food stores. For an application, call 944-8344. That's 944-8344. Or visit our website at www.vsh.org. vsh.org.